But no one would ever say, I'm deserving of condemnation from God, my Creator, because of the standards I have picked and lived according to. Cannot, will not, has not happened. Even the worst among us. Now they might jokingly say things like, oh yeah, I know I'm going to go to hell. But they don't really understand the fullness of what that means. No one who's ever made that statement understood the biblical truth of what that means. It's necessary that the law establishes God's standard and makes every man aware of their sinfulness and guilt. Because apart from God's standard, and it's right that He has a standard, isn't it right that God has a standard for those who will come into heaven? Do you really have a struggle with that? If you were to think about this and think about humanity and the worst of humanity that we would look to in our judgment and say, well, I wouldn't let them into heaven. Right? Again, we're establishing our standard. Why is it wrong for God to have His standard, especially when God lovingly, fairly, and continually lays His standard out for all to know? You imagine, just for a moment, standing before the God of Isaiah, Job, and John, clothed in your own righteousness, holding up your standard. Well, but God, I tried to be a good person. But God, I did certain things good. I know I didn't do everything good, but God, and He says, but that's not my standard. Yeah, but God, it should be. Right? You don't understand what Paul says is because of the law, because the standard has been clearly given, every mouth is shut. You will not, I promise you. Hear me today. Look at the examples of Job, Isaiah. We could look at Habakkuk. There are others. When they came before the Lord, hear me today. You will not stand in justification, negotiation, and arbitration before the Lord when that day comes. Please take the time today. Please take the time while there is yet time to go before the Lord and see Him in the fullness. To see Him as He is. To see Him as Paul has described Him. And as He's described you and I. So that your mouth might be shut now. And that you might sing His praises forevermore. What a distinction that is. Dear friends, have you come to recognize your guilt before God? Have you been silenced before Him in His standard in this life? Have you stopped hoping in self and in your own standards? Are you still saying yes, but? Or have you stopped speaking, stopped justifying, stopped negotiating? Please hear this morning. If you haven't, you will. You will. There is a day coming when Paul declares in Romans 2 and verse 16, on the day when according to my gospel, God will judge the secrets of men through Christ Jesus. Oh, you might be getting away with it here. Oh, you might be upholding your own standard well. Oh, you might think that it's no big deal. Please do not wait for that day to recognize your guilt. Don't wait.